Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 18th of August of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, both the Russians and the Ukrainians used hundreds of drones to attack each other. First let's talk about the Ukraine attack because we received lots of very important updates. This is the picture that was published yesterday in the evening, and here we have lots of roads of attacks. The Ukrainians used more than 500 of drones. Yesterday in the evening, somewhere around at 11 p.m. of Moscow times, the pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Ukrainians used 440 drones to attack the territory of Russia. Later, we received the report published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation that during the overnight battle, the Russians intercepted and destroyed 791 drones of the armed forces of Ukraine. And later, we received the report that the Ukrainians used around 500 of drones to attack just the territory of the capital of the Russian Federation, the city of Moscow. During today's massive drone attack on Moscow, Ukraine launched over 500 long-range drones of various types. One of the targets was the Moscow oil refinery. Of these 500 drones, not a single one impacted. Every single drone was intercepted by the first, second, and third rings of air defense around Moscow, as well as by mobile fire groups along the way through Ryazan, Tula, Kursk, Kaluga, Oryol, and Smolensk Oblast. So, as you can see, the Russians managed to repel this attack, and the Ukrainians haven't managed to deal even a small damage to the Russians. But when talking about the Russian attack, the Russians during the night also attacked the territory of Ukraine. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine published this article. According to this article, just during the night, the Russians used 147 drones, and the Ukrainians managed to intercept 111. But the most important thing is that the overnight attack didn't end at 8 a.m. The Russians continued attacking the territory of Ukraine using even more drones than during the night. And starting at 8 a.m. of this 18th of August of 2026, pro-Ukrainian sources began publishing lots of updates on this matter. We start receiving lots of maps about Russian drones crossing the border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation, and how these drones were approaching the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kiev. And somewhere around at 10 a.m. of the 18th of August of 2026, we received a first report that the Russians, as a result of attack, managed to deal significant damage to a warehouse on the territory of the city by the name of Bravary. And this video was published this morning. Here we have the aftermath of strikes by jet drones in Brovary, Kiev region. Here we have fire crews that were trying to extinguish the fire, and it seems that the Russians, as a result of attack, managed to deal significant damage to this warehouse. Basically, this warehouse was reduced to ruins or even badly damaged. So, as we can see, this is not the first warehouse that was destroyed by Russians. During the August of 2026, the Russians destroyed two more warehouses to the north of this area. And the thing is that the Russians didn't stop their attack with this warehouse. The Russians continued launching more and more drones. And first, according to information we have, the Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kiev, from the north. The Russians were launching drones from the Bryansk region, and these are the positions of drones somewhere around at 12 p.m. of the 18th of August of 2026, and these are the approximate roads of attacks according to information we have. So the Russians launched drones somewhere from the area of the Bryansk region. Then the Russian drones began moving along the border between the Republic of Belarus and Ukraine, and from these positions the Russian drones continued advancing further in the southern direction until they got the settlement of Bravary. During the previous 24 hours, probably 20 explosions were recorded through the city of Bravary. This is the most eastern part of the Kiev agglomeration, which means that most likely lots of warehouses, ammo depots were destroyed by Russians. And this is already the picture by 3 p.m. of the 18th of August of 2026, and as we can see, somewhere around at 2 p.m. The Russians stopped launching drones from the Bryansk region. And somewhere at 2 p.m. of the 18th of August of 2026, the Russians began launching their drones from the territory of the city of Donetsk, from the Donetsk airfield, and the Russian drones began moving and advancing along the river of Dnipro, trying to attack the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kiev, from the south. And somewhere at 3 and 4 and 5 p.m., we start receiving new updates about explosions in the area of the city of Kiev and along the river of Dnipro. When the Russians finished the second wave of attack, the Russians began launching drones for reconnaissance purposes. And between probably 5 p.m. and 8 p.m., we were receiving lots of updates about Russian drones over the territory of Ukraine. The Russians were gathering the reconnaissance information. The Russians were collecting targets to attack during possible overnight attack. And there is a very interesting situation with these pictures. For example, somewhere at 5 p.m., pro-Ukrainian sources spotted this drone that was flying along the border between Ukraine and Moldova. And as you can see, according to this picture, this drone was flying in the northwestern or western direction of Ukraine. So this is his position. And according to information we have, this drone was destroyed somewhere at 5:30 p.m. of the 18th of August of 2026. Later, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that this drone managed to cross up to 900 kilometers. This drone started its road from the area of Crimea and continued advancing through the Black Sea, then through the Odessa region, then through the Vinnytsia region, and this drone was destroyed, or the Ukrainians lost a signal of this drone somewhere between Khmelnytsky and Ternopil. And as we can see, the Ukrainians haven't shown in any resistance to this drone. They haven't raised their MiG-29s for air defense purposes. So this drone didn't have any problems to cross 900 kilometers and to disappear somewhere through the western parts of Ukraine. This is a very important situation because with this attack, the Russians realized that this corridor between Crimea and the western parts of Ukraine is unprotected, which means that if the Russians are going to attack Ukraine between the 18th and the 19th of August of 2026, so during the upcoming night, most likely the Russians would attack the western parts of Ukraine, this territory, using hundreds of drones that would be launched from the southern regions, from the region of Krasnodar, from Crimea, from Zaporozhye, and the Russians would try to deal significant damage, especially to the western parts of Ukraine. Of course, the city of Kiev would be also under attack from the Russian side, but as for the city of Kiev, most likely the Russians would use ballistic missiles. So the situation is quite complicated. The Ukrainians launched 500 drones and they haven't managed to deal even a small damage to Russia. The Russians launched just several hundreds of drones and they managed to destroy several objects, to carry out a reconnaissance operation, and to gather lots of updates about the situation in Ukraine. Now let's move further. Another important territory is the Kharkiv region. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked the city of Pechenegi. As for the Kharkiv region, the Russians, according to different sources, were using cruise missiles of Banderol type. So we have these missiles on the map. They're flying somewhere to the south of the city of Kharkiv, and the sources reported later that the Russians attacked the settlement of Pechenegi. More precisely, the Russians attacked the central part of the settlement, and later we received a report about significant damages, destructions, explosions that took place in this area. Later, pro-Ukrainian authorities reported about a big number of casualties, and casualties were among civilians. So, as you can see, the Russians continue attacking the territory of Ukraine non-stop. The Russians use new generation weapons of a new generation. The Russians use Banderol missiles. The Russians use jet-powered drones and so on. And we see that the Ukrainians currently don't have missiles to intercept these means of attack. Anyway, let's wait and see how the things are going to develop further. But it seems that in coming 48 hours, we may see a massive attack through the entire territory of Ukraine, and Russians would use lots of drones and, of course, lots of missiles. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, lots of changes were recorded, and first let's talk about the Dobropolye direction where the map has been adjusted. So this is the end of the 17th of August of 2026, and this is the end of the 18th of August of 2026. The Russians, as a result of clashes, established complete control over the settlement by the name of Krasnopodillia. So this is the village that was captured by Russia, and these are the changes on the ground. The Russians reported about this, the Ministry of Defense reported about this, and several pro-Russian sources published this video where we can see at least two places where the Russians raised their Russian flag. One of the flags was raised in the eastern parts of the settlement, the second one in the central part. So based on this video, based on the report that was published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, we have adjusted the map. From this configuration, we see that there is a pocket to the south of the settlement of Krasnopodillia. We're talking about the settlement of Vadyanske, and most likely the Ukrainians, the contingent of the armed forces Ukraine on the territory of this settlement was caught by the Russians in Kodron. Most likely in coming days the Russians would try to maintain the lines and to take these territories under complete control. This will allow the Russians to release additional forces and to concentrate their force to advance further in the northwestern direction with the purpose to attack the settlement of Krivorozhe. So the battle for the city of Dobropolye is intensifying.
So habe ich mit Luminar Neo dieses Ergebnis erzielt. Öffne einfach Luminar Neo. Lade dein Foto.
Another important territory is the Kramatorsk agglomeration, Kramatorsk and Slaviansk agglomerations. During the previous 12 hours, the Russians improved their positions through this area as well. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that Russians also captured the settlement of Orikhuvatka, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates. Though this is the end of the 17th of August of 2026, and this is the end of the 18th of August of 2026. As for the end of the 18th of August of 2026, pro-Russian sources haven't published a video where we might see flags or something like this, so that is why as of now, we don't have enough of strong proofs. We only the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, but most likely in coming 2 or 3 days, the Russians would publish videos with flags or videos that would confirm Russian control or at least the Russian presence through this territory. The village of Orikhuvatka is a very important village because this village is located along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbas Canal, and as you can see, there is a strict access between the settlement of Orikhuvatka and the eastern bank of the Seversky Donetsk-Donbas Canal. The Russians don't need additional equipment or additional munition or something else to cross these territories because they can do this without problems, which means that from now on, the Slaviansk-Kramatorsk offensive operation will intensify because the Russians would be able to introduce more forces on the Ukraine side of the Seversky Donetsk-Donbas Canal, which means that the Russians would be able to increase the pressure on the Slaviansk-Druzhkovka agglomeration. The Russians continue offensive operation around the Donbas, around the heart of the Donbas Arc operation, and it seems that the main part of the battle for this territory will start much earlier than expected. As for the northern direction, during the previous 12 hours, during the previous 24 hours, nothing important was recorded. We have lots of explosions along the line of combat contact. The Russians are trying to soften defenses of the armed forces of Ukraine with the purpose to start a major offensive operation a bit later. Also, explosions were recorded through the city of Sumy itself. Lots of explosions. The Russians dealt significant damage, and the Russians also attacked the settlement or the territory around the village of Krasnopodillia. But as you can see, without significant changes on the ground. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds we